Gabriel stood at the center of the room, a glass of champagne in hand, surrounded by his workers. They were all smiles, cheering and raising their glasses to celebrate the signing of another major contract. Gabriel, tall and striking with a boyish charm, wore an expensive tailored suit that made him look like the king of the world. He raised his glass higher, signaling silence. "To us," he said, his voice commanding attention. At just 35, he was a billionaire, running successful companies across the country. People often said he had a special relationship with money. It followed him like women. Yet, despite all the admiration and success, there was one person who wasn't entirely impressed: his mother, Florence. Florence was a strong-willed woman, the backbone of Gabriel's life. Though she often worried about her son, to her, Gabriel was incomplete. He had money, fame, and power, but he lacked what she believed mattered most: a stable home and a good wife. "Gabriel, you don't want to get married. Is it until you've slept with all the women in this state?" Florence would ask him with a deep sigh. "Mom." Gabriel would laugh. "You and Genevieve should just leave me alone now. Eh? Or should I marry the both of you? All these girls, they just want money." "What about that girl Genevieve told me you were serious about?" Florence asked. "Mommy, her name's Mimi. Mimi's nice, but marriage? Nah, not yet." Florence shook her head sadly, her heart heavy with worry. She often shared her concerns with her best friend Amaka. One evening, they sat in Florence's cozy living room peeling melon seeds and discussing Gabriel. "Stop waiting for him to settle down on his own," Amaka said firmly. "You and I both know how these children behave. Once they are busy with work, they will never find the right girl. They don't have that time. So we have to help them." "But what can we do? Eh? I've done everything," Florence asked, leaning back on her chair. "The last girl Genevieve found, he said she was just for fun. Can you imagine, eh? Wasting a young girl's time for his own happiness." Florence grew up in a small, poor village where survival was a daily struggle. They could barely afford a meal a day. Florence, the eldest of 4 children, often went to bed hungry so her younger siblings could eat. Her clothes were old and faded, her hair roughly cut because they couldn't afford to braid it. She was in her first year at university. To make ends meet, Florence did assignments for her classmates and charged them small fees. One day, she delivered an assignment to a classmate, Uche, who was sitting with a friend. The friend, Charles, was tall, handsome, and wore clothes that screamed wealth. He gave Florence a lingering look that made her uncomfortable and flattered at the same time. Weeks later, Charles asked her out. Florence was shocked. A rich guy like Charles interested in her? She fell for him quickly, believing it was love. To her, Charles was a trophy, a sign that her life could change for the better. "I will marry you someday," Charles often said, and Florence clung to those words like a lifeline. She loved him and trusted his promises. But everything changed during one holiday. Florence fell seriously ill. Her mother, worried, started examining her one afternoon. "Ha! This girl," her mother exclaimed, touching Florence's belly. "You don't carry belle. I don't see him." Florence's heart sank. She felt the world collapse around her. When she told Charles, he was furious. "I'm not ready to be a father now," he said coldly. "Why not abort it? I promise we'll get married once I'm done with school." But Florence was scared. She couldn't bring herself to end the pregnancy. Her decision changed her life forever. Charles sent her money once in a while, but he didn't show up when she needed him the most. By the time she gave birth to the twins, Charles had traveled abroad, cutting all contact with her. Alone, Florence faced shame and ridicule as a single mother and school dropout. She did every job she could find, cleaning, selling food, and even washing clothes, to provide for her children, Genevieve and Gabriel. Her children became her strength. Genevieve, graceful and hardworking, learned sewing and started making dresses while studying in college. Gabriel, curious and determined, learned programming from a wealthy man who saw potential in him. When the man died of cancer, he willed his businesses to Gabriel. That was the turning point. As Gabriel's business empire grew, he opened a fashion house for Genevieve, where she designed stunning dinner dresses and wedding gowns. He also told Florence to retire, putting her on a generous monthly allowance. But Florence wasn't fully happy. She worried that Gabriel was following Charles' footsteps. Charming, rich, but unwilling to commit. One day, after Florence shared her worries again, Gabriel laughed and said, "Mom, chill. Worries isn't all there is to life." But Florence wasn't satisfied. Gabriel was in his study one day, bent over his desk, working on the final touches of a business proposal, when he heard the faint sound of his mother's voice. He sighed deeply, dropping his pen as he walked to the window blinds and peeped through. "Ah, Mommy again. What does she want this time?" he murmured as he walked down the stairs to meet her. He reached the sitting room to find his mother seated beside the young girl. The girl looked so nervous, holding a glass of juice like it was about to be snatched away. "Welcome, Mama," he said, forcing a smile and giving her a warm hug. She smiled brightly and gestured for the girl to stay seated. "Wait here, my dear, I'll be back," Florence said kindly to the girl before motioning for Gabriel to follow her. Upstairs in his private sitting room, Gabriel didn't waste time. "Mom, what's with the sudden visit?" Florence smiled. "I brought you a package, my son. The girl downstairs is your wife." Gabriel stared at her for a moment before bursting into laughter. "Mommy," he managed to say between fits of laughter. "Mommy, you're joking, right?" "I'm not joking, Gabriel. Do I look like I am?" she said firmly. He laughed even harder. "Haba now, Mommy, has it gotten to this?" Florence's smile faded. "But Gabriel, she's a good girl, fresh and undefiled, unlike these women you bring into your house. And she's Mamoke's last daughter. You know her family well now." At the mention of Mamoke, Gabriel's expression hardened. "Gabriel," Florence snapped, "don't judge her like that. Let her stay with you for a few days. If you don't like her, send her back. Just give her a chance." Gabriel hesitated, but not wanting to upset his mother further, he accepted. She returned home and wasted no time in sharing the news with Amaka. Amaka clapped her hands in delight. "Ah, Mamoke has finally kissed poverty goodbye. When is he coming to pay the bride price?" Florence chuckled. "Ah, calm down, Amaka. He only agreed to check her out, not marry her." Amaka frowned. "But Mamoke will not be happy if it doesn't work out." That's why we didn't tell her the full plan," pointing a finger at Amaka. "So keep your mouth shut." They laughed and moved on to other conversations. On the 5th day, Florence decided to visit her son unannounced. She entered the compound and froze. There was Obioma, wearing a maid's uniform and trimming the flowers like a professional gardener. Determined to get answers, she approached Obioma. "What is the meaning of this, and why are you dressed like this?" Obioma wiped her hands on her apron and smiled brightly. "Good afternoon, ma. I now work here." "Work here? Why should you work here?" Florence asked. I woke up the day after we came and I decided to sweep the whole house. Gabriel came back in the morning and said I did a great job. I thought I was winning him over." "Then?" Florence asked. "Then he called me and told the head of his staff to employ me as one of the cleaners. He said I swept better than the last cleaner." "Hey!" Florence shouted, placing both hands on her head. But ma, Obioma added, her face lightening up. "I like the job. It's easy and it's paying me very well. I even eat for free, so I can even send most of the money to my parents." Florence stared at her speechless. The girl's enthusiasm only made her disappointment worse. Florence's lips tightened. "I won't give up. If Gabriel thinks he can outsmart me, he doesn't know the kind of mother he has." Then she unleashed her next plan. Weeks later, she had blended seamlessly as a new cook, determined to remain unnoticed by Gabriel and his high society friends. Her disguise worked because she knew how to fit in, as she came from a poor background. She had warned Obioma on her first day to say nothing about her true identity. Obioma, though confused, nodded obediently. Life as a cook wasn't easy, but Florence carried herself with dignity. She cooked meals, scrubbed pots, and avoided Gabriel at all costs. One day, while washing dishes in the kitchen, a stunningly beautiful woman walked in. The air changed immediately as the other servants stiffened, their eyes cast down. Florence was lost in her task, humming softly, when the woman's sharp voice rang out, "Hey, you there!" Florence ignored it, thinking it wasn't directed at her. The woman stormed closer, grabbed Florence by the shoulder, and pushed her. Florence stumbled, falling hard on the floor. Plates shattered around her, and sharp pieces caught her. She winced in pain, holding her waist as she tried to steady herself. "How dare you sing and ignore me? What kind of disrespect is this?" she yelled. "Ma, she's new," the head of the house staff said timidly. "And so?" the woman snapped. "Next time this happens, I will send her back to whatever slum she crawled out from." She turned on her heels and stormed out. The other servants quickly helped Florence up. Ebere, one of the younger staff, whispered, "No mind am, Mama. Na so she did do. Oga never even marry herself." Back in her room, as Ebere cleaned Florence's wounds, Florence asked, "Who is she?" "She be Oga people. They say that she gets Star Supermarket." Ebere replied, "She owns Stars?" Florence asked, raising her brows. "Yes. Head of staff say Oga won't marry him." Ebere added, "Sophia!" Florence screamed loudly before Ebere could finish. "Ah, Mama, no be Sophia o. Head of staff no dey carry rumor. Na update she dey give," Ebere added. Florence withheld herself and only thanked Ebere for her help. That night, Gabriel sent her a text message. "I found the one, Mom." Florence read it and sighed. Too weak to respond, she went to bed. Gabriel, puzzled by her silence, wondered what his mother was up to, but soon forgot about it as he buried himself in work. One day, Florence was asked to prepare breakfast for a guest and take it to the visitor's room. Normally, Obioma or Ibubo would help with such tasks, but neither was available. Florence hesitated but finally agreed when she confirmed Gabriel wasn't home. Immediately the young lady saw her. She smiled warmly and bowed slightly. "Thank you, Ma," the lady said, quickly taking the tray from Florence's hands. Florence hurried back to the kitchen, her heart pounding. Moments later, the same young lady entered the kitchen with the empty plates. She smiled again, thanking Florence before loading the plate into the dishwasher herself. "You don't have to do that, my daughter," Florence said, smiling. "It's fine, Mama," the lady insisted, her gap-toothed smile lighting up her face. Later, Florence overheard one of the servants refer to the lady as Auntie Claire. "Who is Auntie Claire?" Florence asked them. "That fine auntie that just left. She's Oga's PA," the servant explained. "She never lets anyone wash her dishes." That evening, Florence asked Ebere about Claire and learned that she was the daughter of a billionaire. Her father had sent her to work under Gabriel to gain leadership and business experience. Florence smiled, feeling hopeful for the first time. Not long after, Star visited again. Florence tried to avoid her, but this time she was asked to serve her food directly. Nervously, she brought the tray to the dining room. But as she turned to leave, Star's voice stopped her. "Wait!" Florence froze, clutching the tray. "Didn't I tell you to greet me properly?" Star demanded, her voice icy. I'm sorry, Ma," Florence replied quietly, trying to step away. Furious, Star slapped Florence hard across the face. The sound echoed in the room and Florence staggered, clutching her cheek. At that moment, Gabriel walked in. Unknown to her, Gabriel respects his workers and doesn't approve of bad treatment. "Star!" he shouted, his voice filled with anger. He rushed to Florence's side, helping her to a chair. When their eyes met, Gabriel froze. "Mom?" he whispered, his face pale with shock. Star, realizing she had lost, stormed out in humiliation. Later that evening, Florence and Gabriel sat together in the living room. He was still shocked. "Mom, what were you doing as a cook in my house? What's the meaning of all this? Look at what you've gotten yourself into." "I was only trying to find you a wife," Florence admitted. Gabriel sighed, rubbing his temples. Not again. Didn't you receive my message? You just received a slap and unnecessary torture for nothing." Florence leaned forward, smiling. "Who?" He paused and said, "Claire. But I didn't ask her out because I thought you wouldn't approve. She's Hausa and you always said, Gabriel." Florence interrupted, tears in her eyes. "I was wrong. I've learned not to judge people by their tribe. I've met Claire. She's kind, respectful and hardworking. I was even about suggesting her," she said, smiling. Gabriel stared at his mother, surprised but relieved. The next day, he invited Claire for dinner. Florence watched as they laughed and talked. Their connection was undeniable.